Hello, dear children. Today we will begin with the lesson 3.4, How the First Letter Was Written. Now, in this lesson, children, this is a story, and in this story, the author has tried to narrate or has tried to say that when there was no language, or when there was no rather communication, or more than language, when there was no communication, that time how difficult it was to communicate with others, to pass on the messages, or when you are in some trouble, it was so difficult to take someone's help. So this is a small comedy story, humorous story, and in this story, the author is trying to tell about a small family of father, mother, and their small child. And in this story, he is also told that since the father has some minor problem, and they are far away from their residence, and so when they um, he could not go back. Like if he had to go back, then probably taking his daughter along back with him would take a lot of time. So they just wanted to communicate a message to their to the mother. But then, since there was a language problem, there was a communication problem, there was no written message communication system, so they find it so difficult to overcome a small problem, and there is a lot of confusion about it because the communication is not properly done. So that is what we are going to discuss in this lesson. So let us begin without wasting any time. How the first letter was written. Once upon a time, once upon a most early time was a Neolithic man, and he lived cavily in a cave, and he wore very few clothes, and he couldn't read, and he couldn't write, and he didn't want to, and except when he was hungry, he was quite happy. So in these lines, children, you can find out that this is a very informal letter, or informal story, or this is a very this is a story which is written very casually. So we can see that what the writer has written is a very casual and informal language or informal manner. So here the writer is saying that once upon a time, very early times, there was a Neolithic man. So here Neolithic man means the later part of the Stone Age. So in the second part of the later part of the Stone Age. So this Neolithic man, he used to live cavely in a cave. Cavely means, probably here the writer wants to tell that cavely is the word he has used or coined by the author, and it probably means the manner of living in a cave, the style of living, or the way they used to live in a cave, that he wants to describe. And he wore very few clothes. So he used to wear very few clothes, mostly made from the animal skin or from the leaves. As you all know, how men used to live in earlier age. And he couldn't read, and he couldn't write, and he didn't want to. So he was not really very interested in reading and writing, because that really didn't had any application to that time. It was not considered that very important. So you can relate that this story narrates the very old age, very ancient time, when men didn't knew to read and write. And he used to be very happy, and when he was unhappy only when he was hungry. Otherwise, rest of the time he used to be very happy. His name was Tegumai Bobsulai, and that means man who does not put his foot forward in a hurry. Means a person who does not do anything without any thought, or without giving a without thinking about it, just like doing anything without really thinking about it, thinking about the consequences. So he was a man who would really think, would really forecast, or give it a thought that what if he does a particular thing in a particular way, what would be the consequences of it, and in a long term, in a short term. So he was a very thoughtful man basically, and he would never do anything in a hurry without giving it a thought. But we, O best beloved, will call him Tegumai for short. So instead of calling him Tegumai Bobsalai, he henceforth the writer will be referring to him as Tegumai, and his wife's name was Teshumai Trevindra, and that means lady who asks of very many questions. Very many questions means too many questions, a lot of questions. So his wife's name was Teshumai Trevindra, and her speciality, or her characterize she was characterized with asking very many questions, lots of questions she used to ask. And we, but we, O best beloved, will call her Teshumai for short. So again, the way we used to call Tegumai Bobsulai, only Tegumai for short. Similarly, Teshumai Trevendra also we will be referring to as Teshumai. And his little girl's daughter's name was Tefimai Metalmulai. So they had a daughter, and her name was Tefimai Metumulai, and that means small person without any manners who ought to be spanked. So here they have a daughter whose name is Tafimai Metalmulai, and she is characterized with a girl who hasn't really got many uh, manners. She is not mannerful, and she is who ought to be spranked. Spranked means she is not used to sitting at one place, or staying at one place, or sitting quietly. She continuously keeps on doing something, moving around, or she is not rather she is such a person that who needs to be uh, scared or beaten, or at times she needs to be controlled a lot. But I'm going to call her Taffy. So henceforth, the writer is going to refer to her as Taffy. So in the lesson, as we proceed, we will find that the father is referred to as Tegumai, the mother as Teshumai, and the daughter as Taffy. And she was Tegumai Bobsulai's best beloved and her own mummy's best beloved. That means she was uh, very much loved by her father and her mother, and she was not spanked half as much as good for her, and they were all three very happy. So she was so naughty, and she was so very um, ill mannered, you can say, or she was not she didn't had enough manner. But still, since she was beloved to her father and her mother, they used to love her so much. So if she would have needed to be slapped for 10 times, she used to get the bashing only for 4 to 5 times. So most of the times they, or half of the times, they used to neglect her misbehavior, and as she was very dear to them, she was very much loved by them, she was pampered basically. And all these three people were very happy in their own life. Now attend and listen. So now pay your attention and listen to the story. Having given the introduction of the characters, how they are and what their names are and what their characteristics are, that now the author or now the writer is narrating the story to us. One day, Tegumai Bobsulai went down through the beaver swamp to the Vagai river to spear carp fish for dinner, and Taffy went too. Now, one day, what happened that this Tegumai Bobsulai, he went down through the beaver swamp. Now, um, a small water body, and there were um, swamps, lots of fish in that, and he passed through that to the Vagai river. Now, this is the Vagai is the name of the river, and he went there to spear carp fish. Now, spear is earlier, since we are discussing about the Stone Age, so this was a tool. Spear was a tool to catch the fish. So here it means that he used to go to the Vagai river to fish the carp fish for dinner. And since there were no reading and learning that time, so Taffy also went to the Vagai river with her father for fishing. Tegumai's spear was made of wood with shark's teeth at the end, and before he had at caught any fish at all he accidentally broke it clean across by jabbing it down too hard at the bottom of the river. So what happened that when they went there for fishing, his spear. Now spear is a small tool. I can show you. See children, this is a spear, and as it is described in the story, we can see that this is the shark tooth, which is fixed with the help of some thread like structure at one end, and it has a handle like thing which is made out of wood. So this is the wooden part, and this shark teeth is fixed here. And now when he this pointed thing is this handle is held in the hand, and this pointed part is struck into the fish when the fish is seen in water, and that's how fishing was done in those age. So he took his spear and he went there, to the Vagai river, and when he was um, about to spear or about to catch the fish with his spear, suddenly he hit the spear so hard that it banged on the uh, river bed, and it broke down. Like when he hit this part of the spear very hard into the river on the fish to catch the fish, what happened, the fish escaped and his spear hit very hard on the river bed, so it broke. Here we can see the word jabbing. Jabbing means poking roughly and quickly. So as soon as he saw the fish was not going to stay there, so he had to do it very quick. So he immediately took his spear and to hit the fish, but the fish escaped and his spear touched the bottom of the river very hard and it broke. Now they were miles and miles from home, and Tegumai had forgotten to bring any extra spares. So they were very far away from their house, and Tegumai had forgotten to bring extra spears with him. So he was carrying only one which he had broken. Here's a pretty kettle of fish, said Tegumai. It will take me half the day to mend this. Now he saw a beautiful kettle of fish. Kettle of fish is a collective noun. This is a phrase used to um, indicate a messy situation, a bad situation, or where everything is scattered, like, so it's a messy situation. And he says that there was a messy situation, and that his broken spear, to mend it, to make it good, it would take him half the day to repair it. "There's your big black spear at home," said Taffy. "Let me run back to the cave and ask Mummy to give it to me." Now, since it was going to take long, like half of the day, to mend the spear, and probably after that they may or may not get to see that fish, that amount of fish, so that they can do fishing so easily and quickly. So Taffy said that, "Yes, I know that you have a black spear at home, and I'll run back home and get it from, and tell Mama to give it to me, so that I can get it back here to for you, so that you can fish some spear some fish." "It's too far for your little fat legs," said Tegumai. Please pay attention, children. This line is going to be repeated in the next part, or the next page, so it will have a reference to it, so please pay attention. "It's too far for your little fat legs." Now he says that it is too far for your fat legs. Now, is this the distance more for that girl child, or for him it is less? No, it is not so, but he means to say that since her feet are small, so she will take longer time to travel the same distance, and he being a grown up and an elder, so he will take long steps, and he could probably cover the same distance in a less time. So he says to Taffy that, "No, you have little legs, your legs are small, and you will take a lot of time to reach home and come back again. Besides, you might fall into the beaver swamp and be drowned." Now here, a swamp means a mashy land, means daldal कहते हैं ना. So he says that other than that, you'll first of all you'll take a lot of time, and the second thing was that you might fall in the beaver swamp, means the beavers are the fish, a large um, so beavers are a large semi-aquatic broad-tailed rodent which are native to North America and northern Eurasia. So these are basically semi-aquatic animals, and they are broad-tailed rodent. Rodents are a type of mouse. So there were a lot of beavers in this swamp, and swamp is a mashy land. So Tegumai was scared that if Taffy travels alone back home, probably she might fall in the beaver swamp and she could be drowned. She could just go down, sink into the water. We must take the best of a we must make the best of a bad job. So here, make a best of a bad job is an idiom which means to do something as well as one can under difficult circumstances. So whatever best we can do with the available resources, or in the difficult situation, that means make the best of a bad job. So he says that instead of Taffy going back home and getting another spear for him, because she was very small, she would take time to go home and come back, and besides she might also fall in the beaver swamp and get drowned. So he thought it was a better idea to um, find out a way which is really great or which is really good at that particular situation, the best thing that he could do in the available circumstances. He sat down and took out his little leather mandy bag full of reindeer snews and strips of leather and lumps of beeswax and raisins and began to mend the spear. So, in his bag, he was carrying a mendy bag, that means a bag which was used for mending or repairing things. So, he had a few tools or a few things which he would need to mend or to repair his broken things. And in that mendy bag, he had a few things like reindeer sleeves and strips of leather, the lumps of beeswax and raisins, so it would help him to fix things, and he began to mend the spear. Sinew means tissue that ties muscles to the bones, or we can say some tissues or muscles. For the reindeers, he had got and strips of leather as well, so that he can tie the things together. Also, he had lumps of beeswax and raisins to uh, give it a effect of a stick or a glue. Um, that was a natural things used, and then he began to mend his back, repair his spear. Taffy sat down too, with her toes in the water and her chin in her hand, and thought very hard. So now Taffy, who was accompanying him, she didn't had anything to do. So what she did is she put her feet into the water. She held her chin into her hand and sat in that position, putting her legs in the water, and she was thinking very, very hard. Then she said, I see, Daddy, it's an awful nuisance that you and I don't know how to read and how to write, isn't it? So she felt that it was really very bad that she and her father both didn't knew to how to write. And she asked her that isn't it really very, very bad? Children, this is an example of question tag. So if you can see that it's an awful nuisance that you and I don't know how to write. So this is a positive sentence. So the question tag is added, that is negative. Isn't it? Is not it. So she asks a question to her father, and she gives she doesn't answer she doesn't really expect any answer which will contradict her statement. So she says that it is really a nuisance, isn't it? If we did, we could send a message for a new spear. She says that if we knew to write, how to write, then we could have been able to spend a message for getting a new spear. Just then a stranger man came along the river, but he belonged to a far tribe, the Tevaras, and he did not understand one word of Tegumai's language. So, when they were like, Teshumai was mending his spear, and Taffy was sitting and um, talking to her father, at that time, one stranger came there, and he was from a different tribe. He was from a different locality, you can say, different area. So his language was very different from that of Tegumai and Taffy, and so he could not understand even a single word from their language. The languages were so different that it was really impossible for them to communicate with each other in this because they were unable to understand each other's language. and they none of them knew how to read and write. He stood on the bank and smiled at Taffy because he had a little girl daughter of his own at home. Since he also had a daughter which was almost as the age of Taffy, so he was very so he stood on the banks, he did wait on the bank of the river Vagai, and he looked at Taffy and gave a smile to her. Tegumai drew a hank of deer sinew and his menti bag from his menti bag and began to mend his spear. So Tegumai continued mending his spear, repairing his spear, and Taffy said, "Come here. Do you know where my mummy lives?" And the stranger's man said, "Hmm?" Because now the stranger was unable to understand the language of Taffy, what she said. So when Taffy asked him to come here, and she asked her, "Do you know where my mummy lives?" So she wanted to ask him, "Do you know where I live?" So when she asked that question to him, he since he couldn't understand any of the words what she said, he couldn't understand anything. So he was in a surprise, or in a question mark sort of style. He said, "Hmm?" "Silly," said Taffy, and she stamped her foot because she saw a shoal of very big carp going up the river just when her daddy couldn't use his spear. Now, similarly, at the same time, Taffy, we have seen that she was sitting while putting her legs into water and holding her chin in her hands. So she saw a shoal of very big carp. Now, shoal of carp is a collective noun, means lots of fish. She could see big, nice big carp fish. They were just crossing from there, or they were just going in front of them. But why she was angry? She was very angry and she stamped her foot because at that time that her daddy couldn't use his spear as it was broken. So she felt very upset. She felt very sorry, and so she stamped her feet because they were unable, although the nice big carp were easily, they could have caught those fish, but since his spear was broken, his her father's spear was broken, they couldn't use it, and so she was very upset. "Don't bother grown-ups," said Tegumai, so busy with his spear mending that he did not turn around. So he was so busy in mending his spear that Tegumai said to Taffy that she should not bother grown-ups. So she should not ask many questions to the stranger, and she should not disturb her father as well. "I aren't," said Taffy. "I only want him to do what I want him to do, and he won't understand." So she says, I really don't want to disturb you, or I don't want to disturb any of you, but I just want him to do what I want. But he is unable to understand anything.